Welcome to Disc 3 of the Learn Remote Viewing set with Major Ed Dames. Before moving forward with Workshop 3 training, please ensure that you have fully reviewed and understand the content in Discs 1 and 2 of this course. Also, to ensure that your skills will continue to grow, please make sure that you have executed practice sessions as specified at the end of the Workshop 2 DVD before beginning this disc. Throughout Disc 3, you may utilize your word descriptor list in Stage 2 only, and you may refer to the process flowchart at any time. These can be found in your Learn Remote Viewing DVD case. Let's begin.
We're going to tighten up your structure. We're going to introduce you to higher level problem sets, and I mean higher level. I know that this is a commitment. As you've seen, you've come a long way, and what you'll come away with are some very high-powered skills. Okay. So, goals for this weekend. Generic goals are to make sure that you understand that flowchart. The flowchart is critical, except for the last part of the flowchart where we say that last paragraph at the bottom. That is for the capstone course, for level 4. In level 4, we do those kinds of things where we go in, where we need those higher level tools where we're dealing with something that's not a problem set, but is instead a project. A project requires many, many remote viewing sessions, and we have to go back in and explore idea templates, site templates, and turn what is normally a problem into a project. And we talk about project management in the capstone course, cover a lot of that. The bulk of this course will be discussing those sessions, how we attack each problem, and how we attacked it, and what our results mean. This is the first time where you'll be working front-loaded sessions. I'm going to introduce you to front-loaded sessions. You're being taught to solve a problem, solve for an unknown by yourself. Many times you're your own taskmaster. Most of the time you're your own taskmaster, which means you know what the question is. And you might think you know what the answer is. That's the bias. One of the things we're not going to do today and tomorrow, even with the front-loaded problems, when I give you a front-loaded target where we know what the question is, we're not going to discuss the problem ahead of time, because you're too, as new students without a lot of experience, you're too predisposed to biasing. Your biases will get in the way. A professional, we can discuss a problem till the cows come home, and we know that when we put our pen on the paper, we could pop up with anything. A virus can't cause an ulcer, right? But if that's what you're sketching, well, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's a virus in this case. So we know better then, but we can still discuss things, and we're disciplined enough so that those biases and preconceived notions actually don't get in the way, honestly, just because of discipline and experience. You don't have that yet. So we're not going to discuss the problem until after the session is over. Then we can discuss how we would have set it up, what kinds of things we would have thought about it. We'll have the answer. If you've stayed in structure, the answer to the question will be there, regardless of whether or not we discuss it. The answer is still going to be there. But it's much harder on you to sit here and discuss what that thing in the sky may be, especially if it's not a thing, if it's just a light, right? All right. Target reference material. We're going to talk a lot about target reference material as well. In the past, we've just talked about the cue in terms of words. How do we word these matrix search terms? Think of an internet database search. How do we engineer this and orchestrate the search term? We're going to get more into target reference material now, and how target reference material can augment the search, how it can help and sometimes hinder. Not just photographs either, written text. Remember, we used a photograph in level 2 or something. I think it was an object that was taken by a Mars rover. we thought it was an object, and it turned out to be an object. But we don't go in with a preconceived notion and say object. Once you do that, the restricting effects of awareness kick in, and your mind, your active brain, thinks that that's got to be an object, and it may not be. In experimental psychology, again, the term is termed the restricting effects of awareness. We don't want to kick that syndrome in by discussing problems ahead of time. I'll show you. And in no uncertain terms, you'll have a photograph or you'll have the written search term there. And that may start your imagination rolling, and in fact it will. But we're going to go right to work on the problem itself and solve it, and then we can talk about it later. Is that clear? We're heavy on data analysis now. Not as heavy as we will be in level 4, but we're going to spend a lot more time on data analysis. You know by now how important that is, and how difficult it is as well. Many of the pitfalls in our work are not in the structure. The skill itself is relatively easy to learn and to teach. It doesn't take long to learn the skill. But the pitfalls in our work can be in the queuing, setting up the queue, and we're going to cover that in great detail this weekend, and in data analysis, analyzing the data. Lots of pitfalls there. Okay, even though we'll be solving some real-world problems or some actual problem sets, this is still, that notwithstanding, these are still training sessions, okay? It's still training sessions. I'm not asking you to work real-world problems and to solve them for that purpose alone. I'm using real-world problems as training targets to introduce you to real-world targets, okay? That's why we're doing that. We're not after answers per se. Although you will probably answer the question, that is not our goal. Our goal is to introduce you to the real stuff, how you'll be using this in practice, a wide variety and range of problem sets today and tomorrow, and to tighten up your structure, to make sure that you understand that flow chart and that you abide by it rigidly, and to instill a lot of rigor and discipline into your structure. That's how we'll solve this problem. The first session today, session number 1, is a blind session. It's just, some of you, I know you've all been working very hard. It's sort of a review. It's a review after we're done with it, but it's just to get you back in the saddle again. Okay, that's why it's a blind target. Second session. We're going to be looking at, that is a front-loaded session. Second session today is front-loaded. I'll hand out at the beginning of the session target reference material, and it deals with disease etiology, the etiology of a certain disease. We're going to be looking at that, the origin of the disease. Okay. Third session today is a blind target, and that's an event recreation. We're going to recreate an event the way it really happened, rather than the way history tells us. Recent history or ancient history or whatever. It doesn't matter what event it is. But we're going to recreate it. We're going to use that particular event as as that particular class of target. Okay. The fourth session today is a topical search, and that will be front-loaded. It's a topical search where we put quotes around the topic because we're not sure of the question. Remember, I mentioned topical searches are things like the Unabomber, what's that? Atlantis, what's that? UFOs, what's that? Chupacabras, what's that? Is that really the question? Alzheimer's, what's that? What are we really dealing with? Topical search. So we conduct a series of sessions. In this case, we don't have to do that because there's a number of different people who are conducting remote viewing probes against a topic that's front-loaded and seeing what pops out. Is there anything coherent in what pops out? Okay? Predictive intelligence session. We're going to look into the future. Take a look at a question. And half the class will be front-loaded. The other class will be out of the room. That'll show you the difference, once again, between front-loading and not on a dicey problem. And we use the blind half of the room as a control. That's what we do in projects. We have controls too. We have an enigma this time, a science enigma, and the other half of the class will now be front-loaded. You guys will be out of the room. All right, this flow chart is critical this time. This is what we're going to be doing in this first session. We're going to make sure that you can follow that flow chart point by point by point by point. I can't overemphasize the value of your analytical sketches, the S3s of X, A, B, C, however many key aspects you have in your first stage 3. The analytical sketches need to be neat. The neater they are, the easier it will be for you to put together a site template. Okay? You don't need to reference this anymore. Just this. That's just the flow chart there. When you notice that we're going to be working off of bond paper, just blank bond paper. In terms of housekeeping and format, keep that neat as well. In your stage 3s, I actually want you to write out the prompts from the top of aspect X. You don't have to write the word aspect. It's implied by the square brackets. From the top of aspect X, something should, you can abbreviate here, something should be perceivable, whatever. All right? Produce the ideogram and go right into your stage 2s. Here's your S1 of X in this case, and then stage 2s of X. The time that it takes to write this, from the top of X, something should be perceivable, that particular prompt ensures, once again, we covered this in level 2, but I'll say it again. It ensures that you've given mind enough time to swing over and change its perspective to whatever you want, wherever you want it to go. It turns out, in my experience, that you need about 3 seconds to make a swing from there to there to there, or wherever you aspect X, A, B. And this writing the prompt out ensures that that will happen. It ensures that you have the 3 seconds to make the complete swing, that you don't end up grabbing a part of X as you're moving to A, that the 3 seconds moves your perspective all the way over to aspect A, whatever that may be. Okay? So write the prompt out. Where I want you to be really neat is on stage 4 also. Here, because you're using just a piece of blank bond paper like the pros do, S4, let's say S4 of X, you've got 8 columns across the top of the page. Underline that. Put this up toward the top. That way you'll know when you hit the 2/3 point. When you start to hit the 2/3 point down here, you've got to break away and move on to an S1 of A in this case. Don't exceed this 2/3 point on the page for reasons that we discussed in level 1. All right? Our emphasis today is on the T and the I column in stage 4, as well as neat analytical sketches. It's on the T and the I column. A point's reached now. We want your pen in the T and the I columns and putting things in there. When we construct the site template, not that that's going to happen, not that this particular thing is going to happen to you today or this morning, but if you find that in the construction of your site template, where you're trying to piece together the analytical sketches of X, A, B, C, D, whatever, however many key aspects you have, if some of the sketches, let's say this is the S3 of aspect A, if this just doesn't fit anywhere in your site template, if you can't find a place for it, it doesn't fit anywhere here, it may be somewhere else in time or space. It doesn't mean that, but it's still necessary for a contextual understanding of the template. The context it emphasizes, in terms of context, is important. It still has to go in here, but stick it up in a corner somewhere. This goes over here. It's not part of whatever I've sketched down here. It could be in another time. This could be the results of this, or vice versa. Or this could be, let's say you're sketching a satellite here, up in space, let's say, and it's transmitting somewhere. This could be the downlink in Persia or wherever, or a submarine under the water. Has nothing to do with, it's not out in space with the satellite. This is the context that gives meaning to this, and it's in another place. Okay? What we want to get out of this weekend, one of the most important things, are very accurate site templates. We want to make sure that all of you can put together very precise schematic diagrams, because that's what a site template essentially is. Put them together neatly and systematically, so that you can. That's what we're going to use to analyze our data, and to use as a jump-off point for any further work that needs to be done on whatever you're doing. So the site template needs to be neat and properly labeled. First target, again, is just to freshen up and jumpstart the process so we can get into some real-world targets. It's a warm-up session. Your unconscious is going to determine how many key aspects are going to pop up in your first stage 3 sketch, your freehand sketch. You're obviously going to have an X, probably an A, probably a B. Whether or not there's a C, D, E, F, and G is up to your unconscious. All right? You must go all the way to the formation of a site template, and the site template is made up of all the key aspects. Your unconscious would not have given you these things, whatever they are, if they're not important. Let's say these are both X, and this is, are they both A? No, I don't think so. I think that's A, and this is a separate B, and this is a C, and this is a D. They would not be there if unconscious didn't need them as part of a strategy to solve the problem. These things have to be explored. So, 10 minutes on each one of them. That's 50 minutes time on target right there, not counting other things that we do in the session. You probably won't have that many, but I'm just saying, in terms of orthodoxy, you must explore all of those, because unconscious split up the solution to the problem this way, and all of those things are required for the proper context, in usually descending order. The most important one, by convention, we call X the target, and then in descending order of importance. Wean yourself away from that target descriptor word list, because what does it do? It cramps your style. It slows down the spontaneity that we want in these sessions. We want you to pull the descriptors right out of your head. Whatever's popping up in the conscious awareness, get it down on the paper, whether it's in stage 2 or stage 4. Please do not use that list in stage 4, whatever you do. When I say, yes, it's okay to use this target descriptor word list here, I mean in stage 2, folks. Don't let me catch you using it in stage 4. You're beyond that. Because we need the spontaneity in stage 4. That's critical to the solution of the problem. Critical. And, as I mentioned in level 1 and 2, before you wean yourself off of this list, please be sure that you've memorized or committed to memory as much as possible the dimension words, including densities and motion words, which we subsume under dimensions for convenience only. Make sure that you have a good repertoire of dimension words. They're so critical to our work, because that's what you're going to be sketching in your analytical sketches. If you've got something that's moving circularly, you have to sketch something moving circularly in your sketch. If you have something that's dense, you have to sketch this long, dense thing, or at least label it.
The first target is a practice target in order to reorient you to the RV process. It will be up to you to determine how many key aspects there are in your freehand sketch and to explore each of them. In all sessions from this point forward, you're required to execute movements on all of your labeled aspects and provide a finished site template for each session. You may use your word descriptor list in Stage 2. However, you should strive to memorize it as soon as you are able in order to prevent it from hampering the spontaneity of the descriptor words that enter your mind. Remember, you are always permitted to refer to the process flowchart when needed. However, this too should only be used if absolutely necessary. As with other RV sessions, you will once again require the use of a black pen, a stack of blank white bond paper, and a quiet working environment. I will now read the target reference numbers as Major Dames provides them on the board.
I'm going to write the target reference numbers on the board. This is a blind target. And just start whenever you're ready.
The target reference numbers are 8403, 8475. Let's continue. Please have your first completed session in front of you before you watch the target feedback. If you did not yet remote view the first target, stop here, go back, and do it now before proceeding.
Does anybody have any templates that are intelligible and legible enough to know what the hell we've got here? This is the answer to a problem. What's the answer before we look at what the question is? What do we got in terms of a site template? So pull out the site templates because all the data is there. All the rest of your session is scaffolding to get to the template. So all the pertinent information is in your site template. What do we have in terms of a site template? Okay, do we have any people? Huh? Circles or life forms, that's how the... Huh? How many? One. All right, what was your X? Now we're going to get into this, to the real nitty-gritty. On your first freehand sketch, we've done this before, on the first freehand sketch, where is that X? Because by convention, X is the target. But there's only two pieces of paper that are important to us. One is the first freehand sketch, because the answer to the question is always in that first freehand sketch, archetypically. So we look at that, and we look at our site template. The rest of the session, bye. We toss it. Almost always we toss it because it's scaffolding. It's the work that's required to get to the site template. But we want to look at that first freehand sketch also. Where's the X on the first freehand sketch? What is that on? What kind of an archetype is the X on? Steve?
I've got a circle, so I'm assuming it's a life form.
Okay, so a circle. So is your circle a circular feature or a life form?
Life form.
Okay, so you've got an X on a life form. And we'll hand this out. Osama bin Laden, present time. Now, if I go with your data, what do you have? What is that standing there? Is that a person or a structure?
It's a person.
Yeah, it's a person. So if your site template is correct, let's say that this site template is correct. The elegance of something like this, the reason that this is so elegant, if a session, I'm just using this as an example, something is so elegant is because time, present time, Osama bin Laden, present time. Time, as I mentioned in level 1 and 2, has no archetypical expression in stage 3. Time has no archetype whatsoever. Sky and time have no archetypes. They don't appear. So that means if Osama bin Laden, in whatever shape, way, or form he is going to have to be somewhere in that site template expressed. whether he's vaporized in particles or remains or intact or living, he has to be there. And what makes analysis so easy is that because time has no archetypical expression, the only thing in an orthodox sketch will be the person himself and land or terrain or whatever the surroundings are. That's it. That's why that cue is worked when we want to know if somebody is dead or alive. We do this cue first. What are we sketching? A living person or not? Simple. In analysis, it becomes very, very simple. If we were to go with this, all we have here is, what's this stuff down here? Ground? Okay, you got land, and you've got something here that is a life form that makes you feel depressed and concerned, AIs. He feels depressed and concerned. This life form is EIs, quiet and watchful. Okay? And the tangibles are life form, and the intangibles are standing and occupying, whatever that means. Real easy to analyze.
How did you say our target again?
Osama bin Laden / present time, not present location. Because location, we would not be able to ascertain dead or alive, right? Because if the target becomes location, then you've got all this contextual stuff. Let's say Osama bin Laden's remains are in a box in Grand Central Station, New York. That doesn't tell you whether he's dead or alive because he's so hard to pick. You've got all these circles that are people. Which one's Osama bin Laden? Where is he? Whereas present time, location is a very, very small part of the contextual of the session contextually. Then, yes?
So is he living or dead?
What does your data say?
Well, I'm just curious.
Do you trust your data? Did you stay in structure? Did you stay in structure?
Yes.
Yes. That's not overconfidence. You stayed in structure.
Yes, I stayed in structure.
Then what does the data say? What does the site template say? We're not going to. We want other stuff too. What do we have that says he's alive? Emotions. Emotions. You don't have those unless the target's not going to have emotions if it's dead. So you've got emotions there as well as a standing target and other things. So your data says that he's alive. Yeah. You have a single figure. You have an X and an A. That's it. Person and land. Okay. If he's not alive, then we're going to have just features, land features, or a box, or another type of a structure, or just stuff that's all over the place, and if his remains are spread to the four winds, or whatever, or underground, or something like that.
At this time, take at least a 15-minute break to prepare for the second session.
The cue, bird beak deformity. Which bird, which beak? The one in the photo, so there's perfect chain of custody there. What's the target? We already know the bird's beak is deformed, so the target is what? Cause. Primary cause. I put down primary cause because if it's a synergetic effect, or let's say it's a group, a soup of pesticides, then it will make analysis difficult. So I want to look at the most causative agent, and I call that primary cause. The primary cause of that particular individual's beak deformity. So what are we looking for here in terms of analysis? What would I be jumping ahead here analytically? What do you think I would be looking for vis-a-vis that question? Common elements. I want to see the same thing in at least 3 or 4 site templates. Identical information in your site templates. When you see that, then if everybody has it, there can only be one answer. Primary cause. That's a superlative. primary. They can only be one. Okay? Unless there's something wrong with the cue that we don't know. But if there's nothing wrong with the cue, there can only be one answer to this question, just like there was on the last one. That's the value of this cue, primary cause. Now, you are going to be fighting AOL, which is exactly the reason I gave you this as a front-loaded target. I want you to see what it's like to work something that's, a real-world problem where sooner or later in your session, a picture is going to emerge.
This will be your first front-loaded target. By front-loaded, Ed Dames is indicating that you will be provided the target cue, or the problem that is to be solved before you begin your session. The purpose of this is to prepare you to perform sessions of your own choosing and successfully execute them without the need of another individual providing you with blind targets. Even though you know the target before the start of the session, as a new viewer, you should not think about, nor discuss or theorize what you believe the possible results may be. This will only invite your imagination to interfere with your session. By conducting front-loaded targets, you will require more control over your thoughts and emotions, thereby bringing your remote viewing abilities to yet a more controlled level. As with your previous target, mark as many key aspects that come to mind on your freehand sketch and explore each before completing your site template. Even though you are shown the target or cue ahead of time, you must still wait for the target reference numbers. This formalizes the cue to ensure that everyone is remote viewing the exact same target. The target reference numbers are 2805, 1069. Let's continue. Please have your second completed session in front of you before you watch the target feedback. If you did not yet remote view the second target, stop here, go back, and do it now before proceeding.
Mutually corroborating data. Whether the target is blind or front-loaded, it does not matter. Train remote viewers. Mutually corroborating data is 100% correct from our experience. If two or more trained remote viewers come up with the same thing, that's 100% correct. All right? Now, this is a front-loaded target. So some of you are sketching your imagination. How many of you went into AOL Drive on this? That you let your imagination pull the session away, and your session essentially became a storyline. Anybody, that happened to anyone? You think it happened to you? What was your AOL Drive? Harp. Yeah, harp. Alaska and harp, which we figure anybody that listens to Coast AM, and those folks, Alaska harp, bird beak, What's the answer to this question? What do our site templates look like? So what we're looking for here is very similar, if not identical information, because there can only be one answer to this question. So I haven't looked around, and I'm going to correct your structure, but what do we got?
Looks like I got some kind of mushroom spores or something.
You have. I'm not talking about analysis necessarily. If you collate the data, what comes now at the end of a site template is this. Here's what we do as professionals. We error trap. By error trapping, I mean this. Prior to collating and summarizing our data, I want to make patently clear to you the difference between a data summary and analysis in a moment. But before we do that, we engage in error trapping. Error trapping is a pretty nifty thing because it can raise the likelihood that whatever is left in our session is 90% correct rather than 80 as professionals. The way we do this is go back into our stage 4s, 2 or 3 or however many you have, X, A, B, and C. And we look through the stage 4 pages and the AI, EIT, and I columns, the columns that we use to label our site template, asking ourselves the following. Do we really want to hang our hat on this particular datum? Do we really trust it? This particular word here, whatever word that may be, especially with T and I. If you say, yeah, I really felt good about that, subjectively, I really trust this, keep it. If there's a word there that you don't feel good about, say, it's iffy, it could have been AOL, exit out. And then go into your site template and exit out there too, because you don't trust it as much as the other data that you have in your site template. By going through this process, we raise the likelihood that the data is correct. Now we have less data in our site template. If you've X'd out some of your stage 4 data, you have less labels and you don't have as much descriptive information, but the value goes up in terms of the session data, right? The likelihood that the remaining data is correct is raised by you taking out the trash and going through this fine-tooth comb and asking yourself those questions about stage 4. That's what I mean about by error trapping. You get to do that yourself, going back through your stage 4s. So if you've eliminated some of your site template data by going through that process or not, even if you haven't eliminated any data, if you feel good about all the stuff, you've still gone through the process of error trapping, and now you've still raised the value of your session data to 90% for a trained viewer, or a trained remote viewer. That's error trapping. Now, and this is the important part, we summarize our data. By summarizing it, we first collate it. We collate the data. Well, I do this all the time in my work. Well, let's see. I've got 7 out of 11 viewers saying there's a great here. They actually use the word great, and then the other 3 use the word crisscrossed thing, a crisscrossed metallic thing. They didn't say great, so I can't use it. Even though a crisscrossed metallic thing is probably a great, I'm not sure. They said crisscrossed metallic thing. So when I collate the data, I use both those words. I have this group saying great, this group saying crisscrossed metallic thing. I may not use great if I didn't say the word. Same thing with your individual sessions. When you collate the data and you summarize it, the data summary, you may only use the words that are present in your site template. Only those words. And I'd like for you to write a summary right now. Write the word summary and summarize your data. Well, the way we begin this, I'm not going to ask you to do a summary every time, but this time I want to do it. We start by describing the site. The site is a whatever, an outdoor area or an enclosed area or whatever, but you may only use your own words. You cannot you can't embellish. Only the words that you use, just the facts, man. The site is a blah, blah, blah. At the site are, or at the site is something that is this, 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 this. Also at the site are this, that, and the other thing. Got that? Summarize the data. This makes analysis far easier when you do this. Far easier.
At this time, use the data that you obtained from your second RV target and create your own session summary. You may pause your DVD player in order to do this. Please continue when you are ready.
Object round and angular, it's green, yellow, orange, bright.
You're saying plant, you actually said plant. You mean
Plant, like,
vegetative
yeah.
plant. Okay, so he's got a plant.
Aiweld fungus.
Tiny.
White.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. So we're cooking here. You guys are doing a good job because we've got some commonality in it, which is what I wanted too. Remember, we got a 20% running error rate here, but it's that the common elements that we're going to put together and solve this problem. And I think we're on to something here. We've got some common elements here, as you can see. Anybody else want to summarize their data? Doctor?
Yeah, it's outdoors, small life form.
Okay, so we've got a common thread here in all of the data. You guys are saying, essentially, the lion's share of you, that we're dealing with something that's small, right? Okay, I'm not going to use the word particulate, which you didn't use, but we're dealing with something small that's moving. So we have a small thing or small stuff? Yeah, we got small stuff. That's one thing. We got small, tiny stuff. Okay, what else do we know about it that's really important? Also, not yet. Not yet.
A lot of people said white.
Yeah, that's true. That's going to become more important later when we get into the refining analysis. But what's the origin of the stuff? Plant, which is a surprise to me. So if that you're saying plant and you're saying small stuff, what's coming off of a plant or what's connected with a plant? Could be pollen. It could be seed. Yeah. Yeah, spores. Now, did anybody actually? If it's a plant? Now we can start getting into analysis. We've collated the data. We pull our thoughts together in so doing, which is important. We're collating our thoughts. So we've got this idea of small stuff that's connected with the plant. Now, what part of the plant do we know? Did anybody actually do any sketches? The plant and tiny stuff, particles or whatever. All right. Before we go any further with that, let's revisit the question. This is the answer to a question. What's the question? The cause of that bird's beak deformity, that particular bird's beak deformity. All right? Now, if this is the case, if this is the cause here, how is it affecting the bird, do we think?
The food source.
Food source or? Inhale. Could be water.
Or it could be just a topical application of some plant
Yeah.
substance.
Yeah, it could be a topical toxin. We don't know what the insult is, the toxicological insult yet, but we got tiny stuff that's affecting the bird. But it's the bird's beak that is manifesting the problem. Of course, there could be more stuff wrong with the bird, but there's a lot of toxicologists that have opened the bird up, and it's just the beak deformity too. It could be a hormone imbalance or something else like that. But here's the cause right here, the plant and the tiny stuff, right? So how could we know, is there more that we know here? A lot of you have also described this stuff floating in the air. If it's just a plant, let's say, that the bird is eating, or the plant seeds, we would have gotten that. We wouldn't have gotten this idea of flowing and blowing and being disseminated. All the people, most of you who are describing small, tiny stuff, blowing. Most of the people describing plants also get white stuff blowing. Small things, tiny things that are blowing, mostly dispersed like that. So what are we probably dealing with then? Now we can analyze, just like we did in level 1 and 2. Actually, level 2, analysis. We can make some intelligent, deductive guesses, and we'll form some postulates here. Postulate 1 is, I'll throw it out, pollen. Okay? 2?
Could it be something else that's growing on the plant?
Yeah.
Fertilizer?
Yeah, on that, it could be a particular plant.
Mold or something?
Yeah, it could be mold. Huh? Mold. Okay, anything else? Anybody else want to take
I think a lot of people got water.
Okay, water.
Something
Water, but a waterborne thing. mean, if the bird's drinking water and the water's got the same stuff in it, it could still be the same thing. Okay, if we're looking at these things here, probably, let's say with this one right there, if it's pollen, it's probably a single species. That's a good guess, a single species, but may not be. In order to find out, we'd have to go back into whatever your sessions, the common sessions, the common elements had, and look to see in your site template where the plant is. Where is the plant in the site template? That gets a label with element 1 or 2. Look at the bottom paragraph on your flowchart. You can now take a number 1 or 2 or 3 and stick that in your idea, in your site template, and now explore that. This is the kind of thing we do in the higher level.
Detectable.
What we're doing now is brainstorming.
Yeah.
This is a brainstorming session where you've got a number of viewers who have worked this, and they're going back in with Occam's razor, and we're starting to slice and dice this problem here too. All of a sudden, the plant, maybe have undergone a change, and it's affecting the birds too. Now, well, let's look at crows. Don't normally eat plants. Yeah, they are omnivorous. They like seeds and things like that, but it could be seeds. It could not. It could be seeds instead of just pollen. So we need to put that up there. So we got something blowing on the wind, right? Now, the best way to handle this problem is to go into your site templates and put a number 1 on whatever the heck that is, whether it's in a pile or it's in the air. Pick one of those small particles and put a number 1 in square brackets on it. 1. And we call this an element. Instead of a key aspect, an element. Element 1. And then we do a movement on that. From the top of element 1, something should be perceivable. And so all of our attention now, we've turned our microscope up to 2,000 power, and instead of looking at the whole slide, we're concentrating on only one organelle, or only one organism. See? Then we get a lot of information about that particular thing there. Then we're in a better position to determine if we're dealing with a seed or a spore. We'll have a better idea of its geometry. Is it smooth and round, or is it hexagonal or pentagonal? What are we dealing with? Is it more like a diatom rather than a pollen? Pollen is mostly round. Diatoms are something else. Blue-green algae is stretched and long. What does it look like? We can sketch it and draw it.
Let's recap a few things regarding data analysis. After you have finished your site template, it is important that you take a break before engaging in data analysis. This is to ensure that you can reliably focus on the data collected and also to ensure that you're no longer connected with the site. Data analysis is performed by following these steps. First, review all data on your Stage 4 templates and cross out any information that you do not trust. Next, collate your data from each of your Stage 4 templates. Then, summarize the data by first describing the site, followed by what is at the site and how it makes you feel. You can only use words actually written down in either your site template or Stage 4 data. Finally, using deduction, create postulates which match your data. Be certain that your data supports the postulates you determine. Pause your DVD player and take another 15-minute break.
Okay, new session. This is an event recreation. We're going to recreate an event. So I don't think you guys have done this with training targets before too, but this is, we are solving for an unknown. So you have to tell us what went down, okay? Did the butler do it or what? So I'm making it harder by suggesting things like that. Was that really a UFO? Did the butler do it? Now your mind's all over the place, right? So that's what I do to my professionals. Right before I'll do this, and then when they put their pen in the paper to take the TRNs, then I'll interrupt them again, just to hit them again with something else like that. Now remember your last session when you got this yellow butterfly? That shouldn't go in this session. Now they got the yellow butterfly in the mind. They have to fight all this, and in the end, what I'm trying to do is just get somebody to just say, okay, are we ready now? And just not care what the heck, what happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future. Just right now, put your pen on the paper and roll. It's just a job. That's the attitude that we want. When you get your mind out of the way and it becomes just a job, that's when the information pays off. It's all pristine then. It's just rote. Like multiplication tables or playing the piano, it's just rote. Your body just step by step by step by step by step, like building a wall or a house, then you're done.
This target is categorized as an event reconstruction target and will be provided as a blind target. Please conduct this session as you would with any other. I will now read the target reference numbers as Major Dames provides them on the board. The target reference numbers are 7941 0870. Let's continue. Please have your third completed session in front of you before you watch the target feedback. If you did not yet remote view the third target, stop here, go back, and do it now before proceeding.
I told you it's an event. What are the details of this event? What's going down here? Okay? Are we dealing with something that's apocryphal, that didn't happen? If this is a nonsense cue, if the cue is nonsensical, then the data will be equally as nonsensical. It will be incoherent. There won't be any real continuity from one viewer to the next. There won't be any overlap if it's a nonsensical cue. Yes,
Falling into an opening in an enclosure.
Do you have any movement associated with your...
I have the same thing, an enclosure, an opening, a depth, and a movement up and down.
Okay. Is this all that we're dealing with here in terms of... In other words, this is not the Battle of the Bulge, or it's not the invasion of Normandy. It seems pretty simple to me in terms of an event. Is it just a pogo stick? Do we have any people or life forms or animals in...
Life form. I have life form.
Life form. How many?
6.
2, 4, 5. So we don't have a cast of thousands. This is not a Cecil B. DeMille thing. So we have a small... Did you guys get any life forms?
I kept producing that archetype of mortality.
Okay, but did you get any life forms in it? Yeah, we can't... even with professionals, guys, I would be very, very careful about ideograms. Be very, very careful. Yes, they can be used in analysis, but I don't want you guys to even attempt it. We can't really use them, especially at your stage of the game, in analysis. Honestly, I don't use them anymore either. I just totally have abandoned using stage ones in any way, shape, or form. That's after 15 years of using them. I don't use them anymore. I rely entirely upon my stage 3 sketch, my analytical sketches, entirely. I don't trust ideograms the way I used to trust them. That's not to say that they're not important. They are vitally important, but I wouldn't use them in analysis. Okay? It's a good point, though, as you see. Did anybody else get an idea of death? Did we get death?
Fighting. Some fight.
Death?
Death.
Fight. Death? Just death. Where do you find your X in your freehand sketches? Where is the, you have yours on the life form. Anybody else? Where is the X, which is our target? What is your site template portraying? How many life forms do you have?
Well, I guess I only have one then.
Okay, you have one life form. What's going on with the one life form?
Life form, dead, flattened, toppled, fighting, sprung up, quiet.
Sprung up. Sprung up? All right. Here's something else you can do to regain contact and grab some more information real fast, okay? You're hanging your hat on a thing at the site that's most important. Put a number 1 on it and hit it. From the top of element 1, something should be perceivable, or the purpose. We do this in level 4. We get into we learn how to explore the site template and flesh it out with a lot more information that's usually enough so that we don't have to do a bunch of drawings and sketches. So the purpose of element 1 should be perceivable. The source, the origin, these are high-level terms. When you do that, keep in mind, though, you're going to leave the site. If my target's a telephone and I don't know it, I've just sketched this thing and it's really a telephone. Let's say I'm looking for a bomb, right? And the bomb's in a telephone. And that's what I've sketched somewhere, this thing, and I don't know it's a telephone. I need to know more information about it. Instead of just doing movements on it, because I may not have ever seen a telephone before. I may not ever be able to call that by name because I've never seen one, right? But I might be able to describe it better to somebody else. So the purpose of element 1 should be perceivable. Now, my unconscious has to come up with a new stratagem in order to describe for me that the purpose of this, which is a communication device or whatever, and that's going to take me to a whole new scenario over here. It's like a brand new session. Event. Jesus of Nazareth / death. That's the event. Now, was there a Jesus of Nazareth? And if it could be wrong on 2 counts. If there was no such thing as Jesus of Nazareth, then there's no death at Jesus of Nazareth. Then what does your unconscious give you? It may give you total symbology. Are those things symbols? Or did you actually get wood and things like that? You know what? If there was no Jesus of Nazareth and there was no death, then your stage 2s would be all vacuous. You wouldn't have grainy, metallic, noisy, that kind of things like that, because there's no physicality. You would have dimensions, and you would have ideas in your stage 4. But your stage 2s would be almost void, because an idea has no physicalness. It pops up in stage 4, but it isn't real. It's apocryphal. Are those things that you guys got real?
It's the placement of the body or
Death. The death means the moment of death. Death means death. That moment of death. Okay, the moment where a person expires. The extirpation of that particular person. That's what we mean by death. We don't mean corpse. We mean the event itself of dying. But what does it look like in the session? Interestingly, there are some things, transcendental-wise, that do pop up with regularity in sessions like this. A lot of times you do have spiral motions upward or a motion upward that way. That idea is almost always expressed when a person dies. When things die, you get a motion that way. You do get those kinds of things. Just so you know.
Pause your DVD player and take another 15-minute break.
Every moment in this session, for those of you who are front-loaded in this session, that's going to be this side of the room. If you catch yourself one moment thinking, beginning to contemplate any datum that enters conscious awareness, if you start to think about that, it's going to be a seed for your imagination, for your creative imagination to take off. You can't do that. Every time you get interested in anything, it's time to move on to the next step, whatever that is. This is particularly relevant in stage 4, because stage 4, the pace is slower. That's much more opportunity for creative imagination to jump in there as your best friend and help you out. You must have control of your mind, rigid control of your mind. What that means is this has to be rote, just like the multiplication tables. You don't question, what 7 times 7 is. It's just 49. It has to be that fast. No thinking whatsoever. Do not think at all, or you will blow this, because it's very dicey. All right? They'll be blind. Those guys are your control. If they come up with the same thing you came up with, that's a good thing for you, because they're working in this blind. They have no idea what the target is, other than it's a predictive intelligence problem. Become a robot until the end of the session. After the session's over, we can strap our egos back on. We can strap all that stuff back on. We can be us again. But one that you're in this session, robot. But that's the same as any other skill, really, whether it's skiing or ice skating. Athletes have big egos. The stars have big egos. But they know better than to take that ego out there on the basketball court or on the ski slopes or wherever they're at. Because it's not going to serve them well. It's going to get in the way of their performance. So your egoic mind has to go out when you put your pen on the paper. And your analysis has to be controlled. No running analysis. Essentially, I've got this much information. That could mean this. That could mean this. That's thinking. Okay? If you're worried, if you become frustrated, that's thinking too. Frustration means you're thinking about something and you're not happy. That's frustration, thinking. If you're worried and your face gets all contorted, and I see that, I know you're worried, that's thinking. I have been in your place before, and I know how difficult this is for new people to do. It was very difficult for me for years. It wasn't easy. It just takes practice, but you got to start somewhere. This is where we start. You folks to leave the room for about 3 minutes, just 3 minutes, if I may ask you to do that, while I front-load these people on the exact nature of the target. I'm going to give them the cue, and you're going to be blind.
For this target, half the class will perform the session in the blind, and the other half will be told what the target is in advance, thereby making them front-loaded. Initially, many of the front-loaded viewers will let their imagination get the better of them when doing a session. But with time and practice, there is no discernible difference between the two methods for professional remote viewers. For this target, you will perform the target with the blind half of the class and will not be shown the target until you have executed the session. I will now read the target reference numbers as Major Dames provides them on the board. The target reference numbers are 4900, 3998. Let's continue. Please have your 4th completed session in front of you before you watch the target feedback. If you did not yet remote view the 4th target, stop here, go back and do it now before proceeding.
Okay, let's look at the Q and discuss the Q and then talk about our findings and see where we go from here. All right? All right. So the Q, the actual Q was U.S. mainland / next deadly foreign terrorist attack. Now, this preconceived notion here, there's a few things we need to talk about in terms of the Q. We discussed terrorist yesterday. What is a terrorist? The term before 9/11 we could not use. It wasn't an effective search term. It was meaningless. One man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter, that kind of thing. After 9/11, that day seems to have cemented the meaning, the standardized meaning of terrorist. The collective now knows what terrorist means. All right? So that's okay. The term is okay now. Deadly means what it means. Death. Death. Okay, so we're not dealing with a terrorist attack. The topic of interest is not one in which terrorist attack and destroy simply structures. Death is involved. But what's the preconceived notion here? It's an in-your-face notion. What's the preconception? That there's going to be a terrorist attack, a next terrorist attack. That is a preconceived notion on the U.S. mainland. There's going to be a deadly terrorist attack in the future. That may not be a fact. So, in essence, this search term is almost a pseudo-topical search. We're not sure if the question's kosher, right? So these are exploratory sessions to see if there's anything out there that looks like that. So what we're looking for on any session is consistent data. If we've got consistent data, then we're on to something, whether it's a topical search or whether it's a discrete cue. Where's the consistency? Do we have any consistency here, or is the data across the board incoherent? Is there any commonality whatsoever in the data? Most of the confidence factor is over there, though, because they're blind. You guys are front-loaded, and we cannot completely trust your data because you're not professionals. We have to really turn to the control group there. Then if we notice any common elements here, any common denominators, then we can go back to you guys and say, did you get that too? Yes, I did. And now the confidence factor in your particular work, whoever has a one-to-one correspondence there, that confidence factor goes up. How many people got movement that's above ground? That's what I was going to ask you. Was the motion that you're describing above ground, or was it? Or do you know? Do you have a surface a line at the bottom of your page, or are you looking at an event from a bird's eye view that's possibly above ground, or are you looking at a profile? If you're looking at a profile, your unconscious will almost always give you a reference line for land or water or a surface. Almost always. Do you know? Okay, you're not sure. Okay. This intrigues me. This intrigues me a lot, because those don't look like people. Those look like molecules or something like that that's moving laterally. Let's say that this data is correct. It's a pretty descriptive site template. I like this, but that's just my own bias. That's all. If she were the only one working this target and nobody else worked it and she gave this to me, it's pretty much an in-your-face thing. I could walk out on the street out here or grab somebody else, just a passerby, and say, okay, let me explain what this is. These are things moving this way, and it's dry and dusty down here, and it's moving in a coiled fashion, and it makes you sick. What does that look like? And what do you think they would say to me? A germ, or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every one of these things is 6 circles, and it's connected like that. So is that? You're saying that it makes somebody sick, and that this is alive, right? So we're not talking about a gas. We're talking about if it's moving and blowing across there like that, It looks like it may be molecular and protein or something like the DNA, whatever. And it's making people sick. Well, in terms of the question, that's pretty important. That if this is the answer to a question, and this is a terrorist attack that's deadly, that's going to kill, then we're looking at biological or biochemical warfare, something like that. That's why I'm intrigued with that particular session. Were you blind at this target? Mm-hmm. So that means that the confidence factor in our work is higher than those of us who are front-loaded. If there is something out there over the horizon that matches this search term, that's coherent and consistent from day to day, it's already done. It's a fait accompli. It's just as real as an event in the past, at Pearl Harbor or whatever. That's why we're looking at this. Because if there's something there and we download it, it's already happened in the future. It's that solid. A remote viewer, if it picks up a future event, a group of remote viewers, they're picking up a future event and it's all consistent, it's still, the 100% rule still applies. It's a done deal. It's going to happen. But if your data is inconsistent and everybody's coming up with different data, we cannot hang our hat on this. There's something fuzzy, there's something wrong, or it's too far over the horizon, or there's too many permutations and decisions going on right now and it hasn't gelled yet. That event we can't see over at the event horizon. It hasn't popped up on an event horizon. Right? That's what we're looking for here. Do we have anything that's consistent? That's the point. What do you guys think? I don't think we have anything consistent here. Too. No. Even though I like that session very much, we can't go with a prima donna. One of the things you learn as a project manager, and we'll talk about this in level 4 again, is if you're working as a team, there are no prima donnas. That is a big mistake with project managers. Okay, hey, this is a really nice session because it's crystal clear, really easy to analyze. It's in your fit. The answer's right there. You don't even have to do an analysis. There's only a couple of postulates that fit this too. I like this one. I'll take this. You know, you've just eliminated all these other people because your prima donna produced something that you can read. Don't do it. Don't do it. No prima donnas in this business. It's got to be consistent. I'm not saying there shouldn't be a devil's advocate, but that everybody's got to agree before you go with it. There's only 2 possibilities here that I can think of, if that's the case. If all this is incorrect, and you guys are still new viewers, we haven't worked it professionally, so it may be that it's a bad hair day for you. But let's say let's say you did your best and that there really is no consistency here. We have 2 possibilities in terms of my experience empirically. Number 1, there isn't going to be an attack, or number 2, it hasn't gelled or crystallized yet in terms of another of the event horizon. So it could make somebody sick, or could break a building, or the culprits could get caught, apprehended, or whatever. Or there's something that's out there, there's other things out there that are getting in the way of this event. All right? So this is how careful I want you to be. Please be careful. Please be careful. We don't have any conclusions on this one. We don't. We'd have to work it again and see if it comes up with the same results. Nothing. Nothing we can hang our hat on. If that's the case, then there's something wrong with the cue, or it's a nonsense cue, and you have to make a decision.
Pause your DVD player and take another 15-minute break.
So let's see what falls out. I think you'll enjoy this. And I have never worked this before, nor has anyone that I've known in terms of remote viewer worked this before either. So let's see what we got. Okay?
This next target is a front-loaded topical search. A topical search target is one in which we do not fully understand the question, but wish to obtain more information about the subject. All topical search cues are written with double quote marks around them. The target is the Chinese symbol shown on the screen. Please note the double quotes around it. In essence, we wish to find out what that symbol means, and also if there is any additional meaning behind the symbol. Even though you are provided the target, you must still wait for the target reference numbers. This formalizes the cue to ensure that everyone is remote viewing the exact same target. I will now read the target reference numbers as Major Dames provides them on the board. The target reference numbers are 3155 7222. If you have not yet remote viewed the Chinese symbol for target 5, please stop, go back, and do it now before proceeding. Otherwise, please have your finished session in front of you so you can review it with the rest of the class.
Okay, topical search. Long. Long. Dragon. The word is dragon. What we want to know is, what are we dealing with here? An idea or a real thing? First thing we're going to look for is, are we dealing with a creature? That is the first thing we're going to ask ourselves. Does anybody's data indicate you have a living creature? Describe it. It's just a line, a squiggly line.
It's a serpentine line.
No. It's a serpentine line. That's right.
Yeah.
It's a serpentine line. My point is this. Those descriptors there, you don't have any dimensions. You've got ideas. There's not enough here to support the idea that a dragon was real. The idea is still going to impact. The ideas have a reality all their own. But when it comes time to flesh out the dragons, the idea evaporates. It doesn't have enough to it to be able to flesh it out. You don't have dimensions connected with your... You notice that? There's no dimensions? Yeah. Some people got pagodas and religious ideas. A pagoda is not a dragon, but there's an idea there, a mythological idea. Some of the people who did really good sessions have something else connected with the idea of dragon. That's pretty strongly represented, like this. That. There's a few others that have similar things. If you look at her description of what this is, it's like an electric current in the air and through the earth. She even uses the word electricity. In fact, the dragon appears to be a depiction of telluric atmospheric currents, but they give them a form, mythological form, and it takes on the appearance of what we call this dragon. The dragon is really these currents, these sinuous currents that run through the earth and over the air, and were actually worshipped in pagodas So it's an idea that has a basis, a formative basis in this kind of phenomenon, natural phenomenon, but it's easier for primitive peoples to picture something by making it into a form. People who got dragon as simply an idea, your unconscious, that particular viewer's unconscious, has to develop a strategy to express that idea vis-a-vis the target, dragon. So if you're coming up with people in a temple, what does that have to do with dragon? Well, it's nothing directly, but indirectly, the concept is there. It may be an idea that's associated within these people's minds of this thing that we call in modern day, a dragon. It's an idea, those of you who got pagodas and things like that. But I think more importantly, certainly just as importantly, those of you who got, and some of you over here did, this idea of these long, sinuous currents like a river, and especially in your case, you actually called that electricity, and earth, the idea of earth currents and things like that. This, vis-a-vis the search term, is quite good. It's very good.
Pause your DVD player and take another 15-minute break.
We have one more target to work that is the most difficult of all. It's an enigma problem. It's an enigma. Now, an enigma could be anything. It could be a spot on a person's lung, and doctors don't know what that is. They've never seen it before. It could be a UFO. It could be a ghost. It could be anything. It could be what. It doesn't matter. It could. But it's enigmatic because nobody knows what the heck it is. It might be dust on a camera lens or whatever. And I do have a photograph this time.
You will now perform a target from one of the most difficult target classes to date, an enigma target. This is also the last target on the RV3 DVD. The photo being shown on the screen contains a white fuzzy dot. This dot is your target for this front-loaded session. Remember, even though you are provided the target, you must still wait for the target reference numbers. This formalizes the queue to ensure that everyone is remote viewing the exact same target. This target will take you up to 45 minutes or longer, depending on the number of key aspects you have. Do not skip exploring any before creating your site template. The target reference numbers are 3815 0002. If you have not yet remote viewed target 6, please stop, go back, and do it now before proceeding. Otherwise, please have your finished session in front of you so you can review it with the rest of the class.
This is a hard target. It's difficult because whatever the target is, it isn't normal. That's why it's an enigma. We're dealing with an atmospheric or physical phenomenon, or something really alien. This is not an easy target. Why I say it's not easy is it may outrun our collective lexicon. We may not have anything in our collective experience to be able to hang a label correctly, on whatever is associated with this enigma. See what I mean? Let's say it's it's an atmospheric phenomenon. Well, the closest that the layperson can get to something like that would be to describe the physical characteristics of the enigma. Well, it's glowing, and it's this, and it's that, and it's round, or whatever. Okay? Let's say, even worst case, that it's an alien intelligence, or the projection of an alien intelligence, or it's something hundreds of millions of years ahead of us transmitting from another parsec somewhere down here, and it takes the form of a whatever. Now we're really still in the same boat. We can only describe the manifestation of this phenomenon, and that's as close as we're going to get. But it would be like Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal attempting to describe a Cadillac that they see out here in the desert when even the concept of a screw is alien to them. Got that? First of all, does the session data indicate that we have something, and that is not just a flaw in the printer? That isn't just a whiteout that popped up on a printer, right? Is there something there at the site, or is there something associated with this particular target that we've got, or is it just fluff? In other words, if there's nothing there, if that's just a flaw, then most of the sessions will be just a tree in the forest and nothing else. And what's wrong with, and what that would mean is that the photograph itself has a blotch on it. The photograph's not the target. We pointed to a target, and there's no target there other than just a whiteout. You're going to get things like a printing machine, or the forest and a printing machine, because the forest is still there as context. So you get a printer in a forest. Let's say that someone wanted to doctor the photograph. What would that look like here? Well, you would sketch the person. Whether it's a Hale-Bopp photo or whatever, you'd sketch a person sitting there doctoring that, because that's the thing that's most associated with the target. Does it appear to be something actually present at that site in the forest when this picture was taken? Or is it something at a distance? Right? For instance, let's say I had an antenna, and I didn't know it was. I took a picture of this thing that turns out to be a receiving antenna. Well, in those cases, you would get the direct association. If something was transmitting, and if this antenna was actually connected to a radio receiver, let's say, part of the very, very in-your-face context would be the transmitter transmitting to the antenna. And you would pick that up in no uncertain terms because it gives meaning. It's the context that's necessary to understand what this pole is, this metal pole. Even though you don't see a receiver, it may be remote from the antenna. Okay? In this case here, what we're looking at seems to be actually there, or at least most of it appears to be there. So is it this? Let's call it a thing right now. Are we dealing with a thing?
No, not a thing.
Okay. How would you call it?
A presence.
A presence. That's actually a pretty good word. A present. I would say, what would you call? Let's say there's a phenomenon there. Here's a phenomenon. What could we call that right there? It's pretty close to. I mean, in the photograph, it looks like that. It's a glowing thing in the photograph. Huh?
Green light.
A green. Yes, a green light, a green glow. That avoids the idea of a thing. Presence, manifestation's okay. Presence actually suggests a form present. Do we have just something like that there, a glow, or is there more form to it? Is there not just form, but is there more substance? But it may be something that we're just never going to understand, at least not on our watch, especially if we don't study it. Yes, sir?
I had the idea of an egg yolk trying to escape from the shell.
You had a metaphor then, and that may be that may be as close as we can get to understanding this, or even allegory. Allegory and metaphor are what the mind reverts to and when it just has nothing else to go on. We have to use metaphor and allegory to describe some of these enigmatic things. It's just like the Chinese sketching a dragon to try to cope with the physics of telluric currents or electricity in the atmosphere, that kind of thing. You know what? This session it attempted to establish that. What is it? And failed. Except we didn't fail. We established that the reality of the thing at the site. But okay, that's as close as we could get to what is it? That it's real. That there's something real there. The photograph isn't faked. That it's not an artifact of the production of the development process. It's not something on the printer. It's not white out. That's what we established. So, origin, purpose. These are questions. Yeah, in terms of human ideation, origin, purpose. How about source? Yeah, that's what we need. We need stuff like that. Okay? Because let's say you've never seen a piece of technology before. You don't have no idea what this is. You think that it might be technology. You know it's a thing, but you don't know what it actually does, and you'd like to know. Let's say maybe it's harmful. Maybe that's a bomb or something worse, right? You just don't know what it is. You remote view it. Well, even though that may be thousands of years ahead in terms of technology, and you have no idea what it is, this places what it is in terms of purpose in the contemporary vernacular, in your own local time-space labels. In your experience, it gets as close as possible, even if it has to use metaphor or allegory, as to what that is. Okay? So it takes it right down, right inside your own noggin, and finds a label that will help you. Purpose, in that case right there. I don't think purpose would be a good search term here, because it might not have a purpose. Let's say it is a physical phenomenon. What's the purpose of ball lightning? That's almost it's almost a nonsensical term. It is a nonsensical term, pretty much. So purpose is probably not a good thing yet, unless we do find out that it's a tool, right? If we find out that it's a tool or a device or something like that, then we could go and explore that. Let's get to the root of the problem, which is right now determining whether we're dealing with a natural phenomenon or an intelligent or something that has intelligence behind it. Origin or source. A source may not be a good one either for something here that's so esoteric, because the source, let's say, what's the source of this machine, this device? Another machine, right? Okay. What's the source of that? The origin of this is a cow. The source of this is a machine. Factory. So let's go all the way back. We could do that and look at origin here, and we'd bypass all. This goes all the way back to the start point. What's the source of that? Source. The laser. This device right here. What's the origin of that? This is a good one. What's the origin of that?
Electrical.
Yes. An electrical phenomenon. It's a phenomenon. So this time, if we used origin, if somebody saw that in the sky, and we used origin, we would skip the intelligent device and go right to the electrical physical phenomenon and never catch the idea that there is an intelligence behind it. Is that clear? So you have to be careful. It's best to use both. When you're dealing with an unknown, whether it's something in the sky or something inside on a microscopic slide, or like yesterday's problem, this powder that led to the deformities in the bird beaks, use both. That will ensure that you get what you want. Origin and source.
Congratulations. You have completed Workshop 3. In this RV training disc, you learned that mutually collaborating data from 2 trained remote viewers is usually 100% accurate. The steps needed for proper data analysis. You also learned about error trapping, how to consolidate and summarize your data, and how to determine analytical postulates based on deduction, how to begin handling front-loaded targets, and finally, you learn the basics of queuing and data analysis on a variety of new target classes. The next and final DVD in the Learn Remote Viewing course teaches advanced remote viewing concepts. The advanced DVD will introduce more target classes, including open searches, and introduces the management of a remote viewing project. Before beginning Disc 4 of the Learn Remote Viewing DVD set, please practice with at least one front-loaded session every other day for at least 2 weeks. Remember, when your pen meets the paper, your focus is entirely on the RV protocol. Any preconceived ideas that you have about what the answer to the problem is should be ignored. A good front-loaded training target that can be executed often is the following: Next Day / USA Today newspaper / front page / primary photo. The front page photo for the USA Today newspaper can often be purchased in most regions of the United States or found on the Internet. This same cue can be executed each and every day, and if on target, you will accurately receive tomorrow's front page primary photo, which in most cases refers to the top story for the day. Remember, remote viewing provides up to 80% accuracy for trained viewers. Therefore, you should be hitting almost each daily target with extreme accuracy. If you find yourself having trouble obtaining accurate daily results, consider going back through the previous Learn RV DVD lessons and taking notes on proper pace, protocol, and structure for conducting a successful RV session. RV may seem difficult at first, but with practice, it will become second nature. Finally, now that you're a more experienced remote viewer, you're invited to register at the official Major Ed Dames Remote Viewing Community Forums. There you can chat with other remote viewers, assign targets, trade target reference numbers, or ask fellow remote viewers questions you may have. Access the Remote Viewers community online at www.learnrv.com/community. This is a free service provided to all remote viewers and requires no obligations.